Thank you, Trustee Mosier. Dr. Schaefer?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Trustee Mosier, I certainly appreciate your comments. To give you some additional information and maybe a perspective, in my analysis, and I only did go back to 2008, but in my analysis, what I find interesting, and Trustee Mosier and I have had these conversations, and I agree. We continue to tighten up our hiring practices, and in some case, interestingly, much to the chagrin of people on campus who don't want us to tighten those up if they're involved with it. But we continue to do that. We continue to strengthen the management structure, the expectation of managing employees, and as you've heard about some of the angst on campus and the feedback, as I said before, comes from some of that. They did seem to make the right decision because of the outcome of each case. So I don't know that this issue perpetuates from the fact that the managers weren't managing or necessarily doing it right. My quick estimation, and to my second point, is that of these, it looks like there's 5 staff that would fall into the classified staff category, 4 administrators and 3 professionals. And then there's a handful of other instances that really I don't think are germane to it, students and things like that. I guess our student employees would be classified as unclassified staff. I don't think in the new structure though. But the other point is that these changes, and you've heard some of the testimony about the concern of annual contracts for professional administrators, and to the direction I've received from the board since I've been hired, that's also a focused and a significant change in the way we manage administrators and professional staff. And so I just wanted to point those things out, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Schaefer. Do any of the other board members have comments? If not, Trustee Kelty would like to speak.
Yeah, I missed the board meeting last time, so I'm running on deficit talk, and so I'm going to make. I've thought about this long and hard, and I've got about 5 points here I'd really like to make, because I think these are more or less incontrovertible. The first one is that the board owes its duty to the taxpayers and the students, and it's possible that in making policy and procedure that we would do a disservice to the taxpayers and students. And the one thought that I had was thinking really about what Bruce Curl had to say on March the 5th. Bruce came and talked very passionately about we need to do more for these groups of employees that were thinking about making at will in the future. And his point was, like a number of other people here tonight, that we'll have some trouble hiring good employees if we don't do this. And then I thought about this realistically, and I came to the following conclusions. Number one, hiring is really a crapshoot. And your ability to hire good employees or bad employees depends upon so many variables that I don't think anyone could identify the effect of policies and procedures ahead of time as being part of that. When we go out to hire employees, sometimes we don't even advertise the salary range, and I think that's more important in terms of getting a good hiring pool than saying, oh, by the way, we have highly competitive HR policies and procedures also. I don't think anyone looks at that. I think they look at 3 things: whether they would like to do this particular job, whether they are paid well, and whether there are good benefits. And with regard to these things, LCCC comes off very well. I don't think many people realize this, but we're paid in many job categories here better than the University of Wyoming for people who are equivalent. And I think that just comes as a surprise to you all, but our instructors here would be the equivalent of APLs at the University of Wyoming, academic professional lecturers. And I don't know any of those people that are making more than about $60,000 a year, no matter how long they've been at the University of Wyoming. The University of Wyoming also went through a very long, protracted period of no pay increases at all. So LCCC comes off very well in this regard, and I think if we advertise right, we'll always get good hiring pools. Ed made the remark that we are making other mistakes in not hiring well. And you know what? I don't know that I've got any data to tell me one way or the other. Yeah, we hire poorly at times, but so hiring is a tough thing to do. And so pointing the fact that we don't hire now and then, I don't think has any bearing one way or the other on policy or procedure here. Now, there's also been the point that the current rules have been working well for a couple of decades. Why change them? And especially what Joe gave here a while ago, from the board's perspective, we don't know that these are working all that well. We have some evidence that they aren't. And they haven't really been in place for decades and decades. We made changes 3 years ago. And this, of course, and you know, the people I'm talking about that spoke at March 5th, which was the last meeting, I think these people made good points, and I thought about their points, and I want to counter those in some way. But Kathy stood at the podium and was asking about why we're going through a major change, and are we planning to go through a major change every 3 years? Well, my answer to that is, I mean, I'm an experimentalist, and I just believe in doing experiments now and then. Heck, let's change just for the sake of change now and then. But let's see how it works out. And nothing here is chiseled in stone. We've already made the point that if it's obvious to the board, even in short order, that these are not working well, we will modify them. This board will, particularly. And how will boards carry on in the future? Well, we can't hog tie boards in the future. I don't know what they're going to be like, but this one's very activist, and I think we're going to train board members to just train further board members and so forth to be more like us if we possibly can. And to that extent, we've got board training on the burner for all future boards. So. Now there's this question about, do we need to do better by our employees, especially the classified staff? And Jeff Schmidt had made this comment on the March 5th meeting, and so had Rob, and there have been people who've made that comment here tonight in a rather impassioned way. And I agree. I think we should do well by our classified employees. The night that Jeff spoke, I spoke right up and talked about my experience in the Northwest with crummy campuses that look like they've been rained on 9 months of the year. And in fact, that's true up there. But they're dirty campuses. And LCCC's is great, and I think our janitorial staff is terrific. And by way of doing well for them, we should make sure that they are compensated well and they have good benefits. But with respect to these new policies and procedures, there's not a single person on this campus that we owe anything to who works under these yet, because everyone here's a legacy employee. We are talking about hypothetical employees working in some job classification that we have at a hypothetical job in a hypothetical future where we don't know what the budget is at this point, and we don't know what education is going to be like, and we don't know anything else. And I just don't see the point in talking a great deal about that. I don't think we owe those people anything, and if it turns out that we have to owe them something right away, we can change that policy. Once again, not set in stone. There was also the question of whether we're ceding too much authority to the president through policies and procedures here. You know, when Bruce was talking about we needing more in our policy statement and more in procedure, he was really talking about a policy 4100 from years ago. And I had looked all over in that thing back in my days as a faculty person here, and there was nothing to policy 4100. It says actually less than is in our current policy here. And if you went to the procedure backing it up, I don't think there was much of anything in that procedure backing it up. So from my standpoint, there's somewhat more detail here, and of course we don't want to hog tie ourselves with too much detail, but there's more detail here than there was in that. So I'm not sure what Bruce's point is there. But if we go back to policy governance, we ceded a lot more power to the president when we had policy governance than we are now. This is a very different board. And really, having discussed all of those topics, I have now convinced myself that I think this is the way we should go, and we should get this over with now. And with regard to rushing, Joe talked about going clear back to, what, June of last year to start this process. It actually started further ago than that. John Kaiser was on the board when we began rewriting policies and procedures. We've been doing this for years.